1/3 way through.
No.
45 minutes is...
You've been counting the questions. Okay, so three different views of closure, but basically all of it has the inverted U shape to them. Now for bridging, we look at bridging ties of the core subgroup. So again, these are membership ties of that core subgroup to other project communities. And we also look at a more restrictive view, saying, well, you know, the important ones may be just the administrators and the ties that they have to other subgroups, to other communities. So in the case of core bridging, we know a lot of the positive results you see in teams, that you have access to new ideas, problem-solving help, market information. But you have this additional benefit from recruitment. So recruitment is really not important to teams in that it's the organization that does it. But in the case of communities, there's no organization recruiting anything. So in a sense, the community has to do its own recruiting. And to the extent that there's bridging ties, we think that might also help in that respect. On the downside, you know, we do see some limited result from cost of ties, but it's only one actor. So it's basically you're tied with somebody outside your community versus a closure. You are, two people are tied up in a tie. So all that taken together, we do think we're not going to see any kind of a downturn. We're going to see all positive result. In the case of administrators, maybe even some additional positive results because of the leverage of their special position, maybe in the recruitment. And there is this notion of a linchpin developer, and this is where they've done studies of the whole SourceForge membership network, and they've noticed that there are these small number of developers that tend to connect together a lot of projects. And then if you remove those developers, like a linchpin, then those project communities become disconnected. So we're thinking maybe those are administrators, maybe it's kind of a key person idea, and that's why we're focusing on administrative bridging. Lastly, leader centrality. Of course, the leaders in this case are the administrators, and we look at the central position of the administrator subgroup. We project this to be an inverted U. Again, some positive results. There is the need to interact, coordinate, integrate working developers. But again, these are voluntary administrators. Definitely could be some overload here. So that's why there might be a downturn. Also, there might even be some lost sense of ownership. Literature talks about the need for the members of the community to feel a sense of ownership. And if the administrators are central to all conversations, they might be kind of overbearing and take away some of that sense of ownership. So all of that together, that's why we project this kind of a relationship.
Okay, just to keep it in perspective, what you're doing now is you're taking us through the first two columns of slide 3.
Yes. Yes, so we just finished that. So now you just see more of the detail behind the problem issues. Okay, the methodology then, as I said, the study population is limited to early stage projects, those within 2 years after their first release, to control for project maturity, only developer targeted and not user targeted. And also, as I mentioned before, we exclude corporate sponsored projects. We use SourceForge as our primary data source, the web pages of SourceForge, as well as 2 research databases. The one most important one is from the University of Notre Dame. Greg Mady and his associates have created that, and they basically take monthly dumps of SourceForge, make it available to researchers, and that was certainly a very valuable source of data. So using those data sources from SourceForge, we basically selected a sample frame of projects which met these study population criteria, as well as criteria for data availability and integrity. That resulted in 160 projects. And you do have in your handout a profile sheet, which is from the manuscript, that profiles that group. And it looks like a pretty reasonable distribution of projects. I won't go into the details. We can do that after if you like. So for those 160 projects, then, we extracted data from these sources using database queries. We compiled the data with spreadsheets and created these social network variables using the UCINet social network software. Again, the social network variables there's some examples in your handout. The manuscript describes them. Basically, for closure, we use the measurement of density. For bridging, we use the measurement of membership degree. And for leader centrality, we use what's called class centrality. So again, we can get into more detail later, but that's basically what we were doing at this stage.
So you have extra details in these extra slides.
Yeah, there's each of the 6 social network variables are described in the extra slides, and I can get into that after. So, data analysis, we did the required preliminary work, we did normality testing, and we did log transform the dependent variables. So that was necessary, and it seemed to provide a good solution. In our outlier assessment, we eliminated 17 cases, so that's what ended up with 143 that were passed on to regression. And in factor analysis, we actually had a total of 6 community success variables, including trackers open and trackers closed. Those 2 tracker variables were eliminated, and I can give you some detail on that as well. But basically, that's how we ended up with 4 success variables: the code commits, software releases, software downloads, and page views. In the regression analysis, then, we defined 24 hypotheses, and these are combinations of the 6 social network variables. Those were those 6 propositions I just went through, crossed against the 4 success variables. So each of those pairs is one of those hypotheses. And in your handout is the full list of the hypotheses if you want to just scan through that. So for each of those hypotheses, we did the regression analysis, we did the required assumption testing, found no major problems. We did control for group size, number of members in the total group, number of members in the core subgroup, and even conversation volume in terms of total number of posts. We wanted to be sure we weren't seeing the effects of total conversation volume, as opposed to we want to see the effects of the structure of the conversation. So that's why we also control on conversation volume. And we do apply both linear and quadratic regression. The quadratic is what is used to test for those inverted U's, and it basically involves squaring the independent variable. And there's an example in your handout of how that works, and we can certainly talk about that if you like. Okay, so now the results, the 3rd column. So getting into what I described at the beginning. So I'll do these for each of the 6 propositions. So for the group closure propositions, which has 4 hypotheses again, those are your 4 success variables. We had projected an inverted U-shaped relationship. What we found was negative relationships.
So now you're taking